Thomas and the Fireworks Display. It was a beautiful day on the island of Sodor. All the engines were excited. It was Harvest Festival, and there were lots of prize animals and crops to take to the market. But most exciting of all was the Fat Controller's Fireworks Display. On the morning of the festival, the Fat Controller arrived at Titmut's sheds. "Thomas, I need you to move the goods around the shunting yard," said the Fat Controller. "And James, you are to collect the fireworks from the depot." James was overjoyed with his job, but Thomas wasn't very happy with his. When the Fat Controller had gone, Thomas complained. "I wanted to collect the fireworks," he huffed. "You were only chosen because you can't shunt trucks." "Rubbish," said James, rolling his eyes. "The Fat Controller chose me because I am as red as a rocket and twice as grand." Thomas was ever so cross. James steamed proudly across the countryside. Brightest and best, he hummed happily to himself. He was having a wonderful day. Meanwhile, Thomas was still upset when he arrived at the shunting yard. "Bother James," he grouched, and he biffed the trucks crossly around the yard. When James arrived at the fireworks depot, he was very excited. All around him were boxes upon boxes of fireworks. They were packed safely in special casing. Thomas loaded the precious cargo and carefully steamed away. As evening fell and the sky turned dark, Thomas grumpily shunted the last truck into place. He was glad the day was over, and the trucks were glad the job was finished. James was happily puffing along, thinking about the fireworks. He was imagining all the flashes and shooting stars when suddenly there was a loud noise. James ground to a halt. His boiler had broken. "I will have to go and call for help," said his driver. Thomas chuffed to Knapford Station and saw Gordon. His passengers were all very excited about the fireworks display. Thomas cheered up when he saw how excited the children were. Just then the Fat Controller arrived. "James has broken down," he boomed. "Thomas, you must go and help him, or the fireworks display will have to be cancelled." "Oh no," Thomas peeped as he set off quickly to find James. "The children will be so disappointed if there are no fireworks." Thomas puffed across the countryside, and eventually he found James broken down on the track. "Hello, busted boiler," Thomas teased. "You don't look so useful now." But when Thomas started to push James, he found that he couldn't see ahead. "You will have to look out for me, Thomas," told James. But James was cross. "You said I wasn't useful," he huffed. "But if the fireworks don't get to the station, the display will be cancelled," puffed Thomas. "I'm very sorry for teasing you, James." James agreed to look ahead for Thomas, and they set off together. Whenever they came to a bend in the track, James called out, "Slow down, Thomas," and Thomas would slow down. They were soon working happily together as a team and making good progress. Meanwhile, at Knapford Station, the Fat Controller checked his watch. There was still no sign of Thomas or James. "It's getting very late," he said. "It's almost the children's bedtime." The Fat Controller decided that he would have to cancel the fireworks display. One by one, the disappointed children got back into Gordon's coaches. When Thomas and James reached the junction, the signal turned red and they had to stop. "Why would the signal turn red?" puzzled James. "Maybe a passenger train is coming through," said Thomas. But the only passenger train waiting at the station was Gordon. "Gordon must be taking the children back home," peeped James. Thomas and James sounded their whistles as loudly as they could. "We're here," they whistled, but no one could hear them. At Knapford Station, Gordon was ready to depart with the children. Just then Thomas had a bright idea. He told his driver to send up one of the rockets. "Good thinking, Thomas," said his driver. He opened a box and carefully lit a rocket. He stood well back as the rocket whooshed into the sky and burst into hundreds of twinkling stars. "Look, it's a sparkling dragon," spotted the Fat Controller. "It must be Thomas and James." He ordered Gordon to stop. The fireworks display was back on. The signal at the junction soon turned green and Thomas and James chuffed towards the station. "Well done, Thomas," said his driver. "I think the rocket alarm worked." Soon James and Thomas were pulled into Knapford Station. The children were overjoyed as Thomas and James arrived at the station with the fireworks. "Good work, Thomas," whistled James. "And good work, James," peeped Thomas. "And good work, both of you," boomed the Fat Controller. Thomas and James felt very proud. I think we were both really useful engines today, said James proudly. But we were most useful when we worked together as a team, peeped Thomas. The two friends watched happily as the fireworks whooshed and sparkled in the night sky.